Okay, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling import-export management. But hold on, we're not talking about your everyday stuff. We're talking chemicals.
Yeah.
Those things you need a lab for, not a grocery store. And you sent over a ton of info on this career guides, interview tips, even AI tools that sound like they're straight out of Star Trek.
You hit the nail on the head. What's really cool about this field is that it mixes serious know-how with, well, just good old-fashioned people skills.
Mhm.
You're dealing with all those complex regulations for chemicals, international trade laws, figuring out how to move things around the world, and on top of that, you're building relationships across countries, making deals, and understanding those little cultural things that can make or break you.
So it's like a high-stakes game, kind of like chess. But instead of moving those little pieces, you're moving like huge tankers of really important chemicals, right? It can't be as easy as just throwing stuff on a ship and hoping it gets there.
Not even close. Think of it more like conducting a global orchestra. And the stuff you sent over does a great job explaining the career path. You might start as an import-export coordinator. They're like those air traffic controllers, but for chemicals, making sure all the paperwork is right, working with customs, and basically being responsible for getting those chemicals where they need to be exactly when they need to be there.
Gotcha. So you're saying starting out means mastering all those little details, the nuts and bolts of shipping things internationally. But what about when you move up?
Right, so as you get more experience, you become an import-export specialist. That's where you need to think strategically. Doing market research, finding new global markets, you even get into international contract negotiations. It's a whole new game.
Wow, from keeping those cargo ships on schedule to inking those big international deals, that's quite a leap. So what's it like at the very top as an import-export manager?
Okay, picture this. You're not just managing individual shipments, you're setting up the entire import-export process for the company. You're working with teams all over the world, keeping an eye on the budget, and always looking for new markets to break into. It's a high-pressure job, tons of responsibility, but if you're the right person, man, it's rewarding.
It's the leadership part that really stands out to me. The stuff you sent even had an example of a senior import-export manager, and it sounds intense. Setting the strategy, building a top-notch team, keeping those relationships strong. It's way more than just knowing your way around a shipping container.
Absolutely. For this kind of role, you need more than just knowing the ins and outs of international trade rules or understanding how chemicals work. You need serious people skills. We're talking leading teams, negotiating with people from different cultures, building that trust that makes global trade actually work.
It's interesting you mentioned trust because one thing that popped up in the material was how useful it is to speak other languages. Is that really still important? I mean, we have apps for almost everything now.
Look, technology is amazing, don't get me wrong, but there's really nothing like talking to someone in their own language. Think about it, if you were the client, wouldn't you trust and want to work with someone who took the time to learn your language and understand your culture?
It's kind of like they say you get more with a smile than a frown, right? Speaking of things that aren't so pleasant, the stuff you sent over didn't shy away from the tough parts of this job. What are some of the downsides of being an import-export manager in the chemical world?
Well, let's just say those international time zones. Yeah, they don't really care about a nice 9 to 5 workday. Long hours, and I mean seriously long hours, they just come with the territory. And on top of that, you've got this constant pressure to stay ahead of the game, new regulations, market trends changing all the time. It's a recipe for some serious stress.
Sounds intense, to put it mildly. So what makes people choose this path? What are the perks besides, the feeling of a job well done?
For one thing, the money isn't bad at all. The career guide we looked at, it mentions salaries that would probably make a lot of people jealous. But honestly, it's not all about the money, this job. It's anything but boring. Every single day brings something new to the table, new challenges, new deals to make. Always got to be on your toes, figuring things out.
It's like you're putting together one of those giant puzzles, but the pieces keep changing shape, and the stakes are incredibly high. Speaking of high stakes, you mentioned the regulations changing constantly. The sources you sent, they emphasized how important it is to never stop learning in this field. But how do you actually do that when you're juggling shipments all over the world, dealing with contracts, and taking those late-night calls?
Okay, picture this. You finally think you've got it all figured out, you've mastered the latest harmonized tariff schedule, and then bam, new amendments come out. Or you're finally comfortable with the European Union's reshaped regulation, and then, out of nowhere, there's this new trade agreement with Southeast Asia throwing a wrench in everything. It's a never-ending race to stay ahead.
So how do you even manage that? Are we talking night school, online courses, or just a ridiculous amount of reading in your free time?
Honestly, it's a bit of everything. Those formal certifications, like the CITP or the CGBP, they look really good to employers. And then you've got professional development courses, workshops, industry conferences, you name it, they've got it.
But I'm guessing just showing up at a conference once a year and calling it a day isn't going to cut it, right?
No, not at all. The real key is to make learning a habit. Subscribe to those trade journals, tune into webinars, connect with other people in the field. Online's great for that. Swap ideas, share war stories. You know how it is. The best import-export managers, they're like sponges, always soaking up new info and adapting to how global trade is changing.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. We've covered it all, from beakers to, well, everything else, really digging into the world of import-export management for chemicals. And beyond all the technical stuff, the regulations, logistics, there's a human side to this career that really speaks to me.
100%. It's about building connections between different cultures, finding that common ground when you're negotiating these complex deals, and in the end, making sure that those essential chemicals get where they need to go safely and efficiently. It's a career that demands a unique blend of skills, expertise, adaptability, and a true passion for navigating the complexities of global trade.
Yeah, and it's that human element that really gets me, you know? You're not just dealing with numbers on a spreadsheet and a bunch of rules.
Right.
You're actually connecting with people across the world, figuring out those cultural differences, finding ways to solve problems that are, like, really complicated.
Totally.
It's like a crash course in, I don't know, international relations, economics, and chemistry all at once.
It's a powerful mix, that's for sure. And it really shows you how interconnected our world is these days. Like the choices an import-export manager makes over here, they can have a huge impact on supply chains, economies, even politics all over the place.
It makes you think, even if we're not the ones shipping these chemicals, we're all part of this massive global system. It's kind
Yeah.
of like that butterfly effect thing. Even the smallest actions can have huge consequences.
Absolutely. And that brings up an interesting thought for you, the listener. What are some things you can do to better understand these global connections?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe it's learning a new language or really getting to know a different culture,
Mhm.
or even just thinking about where the stuff we use every day actually comes from.
Exactly. Even small things can make a difference.
I like that.
It's about staying curious and being willing to look beyond our own backyard.
Yeah.
Because in a world that never stops changing, having a global perspective is crucial. It's not a luxury anymore, it's a necessity.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive. From the nitty-gritty of how stuff gets shipped internationally to those high-stakes negotiations that happen on a global scale.
We have.
We've talked about the challenges, what you get out of it, and how this line of work is always evolving.
Definitely. And hopefully we've gotten people thinking and wanting to learn more. Whether it's thinking about a career in import-export or just feeling more confident in our global world, the stuff we talked about today can be super useful.
So to everyone listening, we say, stay curious, don't shy away from challenges, and never underestimate how powerful it is to connect with people. Because in global trade, just like in life, those relationships really are everything.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of import-export management in the chemical products industry. It's a wild ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those cargo ships moving.